Okay, so today we are starting our novel. So you need to go and get your novel. It should be in your crate. The 100 Dresses. Okay, so boys, remember, don't just be like, oh, we're talking about dresses. This is talking about bullying and miscommunication and misunderstanding. So it's a short novel, and we're gonna have fun with it. We're going to enjoy it, and we're going to read along, and then you are going to answer some questions independently. Okay? So go ahead and open it up to the first page, and it'll say page 6, and it'll look like this. Okay? So, chapter 1, Wanda. Today, Monday, Wanda Petrotsky was not in her seat, but nobody, not even Peggy and Madeline, the girls who started all the fun, noticed her absence. Usually, Wanda sat in the next to the last seat in the last row in room 113, or in room 13. She sat in the corner of the room where the rough boys who did not make good marks on their report cards sat. The corner of the room where there was most scoffing of feet, most roars of laughter, and anything funny was said, and most mud and dirt on the floors. There you go, you saw Thor. Wanda did not sit there because she was rough and noisy. On the contrary, she was very quiet and rarely said anything at all. And nobody had ever heard her laugh out loud. Sometimes she twisted her mouth into a crooked sort of smile, but that was all. Nobody knew exactly why Wanda sat in that seat, unless it was because she came all the way from Bogans Heights, and her feet were usually caked with dry mud, and she picked up coming down the country roads. Maybe the teacher liked to keep all the children who were apt to come in with dirty shoes in the one corner of the room, and no one really thought much about Wanda Petrotsky once she was in the classroom. The time they thought about her was outside of school hours, at noontime when they were coming back to school, or in the early morning before school began, when groups of 2 or 3 or even more would be talking and laughing on their way to the schoolyard. Sometimes they waited for Wanda to have fun with her. The next day, Tuesday, Wanda was not in school either, and nobody noticed her absence again except the teacher and probably Big Bill Byron, who sat in the seat behind Wanda's, and who could now put his long legs around her empty desk, one on each side, and sit there like a frog to the great entertainment of all his class or all his corner of the room. But on Wednesday, Peggy and Maddie, who sat in the front row, along with the other children who got good marks and didn't track in a whole lot of mud, did notice that Wanda wasn't there. Peggy was the most popular girl in school. She was pretty, she had many pretty clothes, and her auburn hair was curly. Maddie was her closest friend. The reason Peggy and Maddie noticed Wanda's absence was because Wanda had made them late to school. They had waited and waited for Wanda to have fun with her, and she hadn't come. They kept thinking she'd come any minute. They saw Jack Beggles running to school, his necktie askew and his cap at a precocious tilt. They knew it must be late, for he always managed to slide in his chair exactly when the bell rang, as though he were making a touchdown. Still, they waited 1 minute more and 1 minute more, hoping she'd come. But finally, they had to race off without seeing her. So when they say they're going to have fun with her, they don't mean that they're going to wait and play a game. They're going to pick on her, right? The two girls reached their classroom after the doors had been closed. The children were reciting in unison the Gettysburg Address, for that was the way Miss Mason always began the session. Peggy and Maddie slipped into their seats just as the class was saying the last lines, that these dead shall not have died in vain, that the nation shall, under God, have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from this earth. So, first off, here's Loki. So you all get to see Loki for a minute. This is my rotten one, and you can see Thor's little nose. So, let's be real, they're all rotten, aren't they? So, we just read the first chapter. It's a short chapter, but it had a lot in it. So, we got some main characters. We know that Wanda is a girl that comes from the hills, and she brings a lot of mud in with her. So, we get a little bit of story as to why she might be late some days, but we don't know why she's absent yet, right? Also, we know that the girls make fun of her, but we're not sure exactly why yet. We know one of them has really pretty clothes, and we might be able to guess something by the title of the book. But right now, I want you to take a minute and get out your reading novel packet and look at chapter 1, okay? All right, so do you have your packet? Okay, look at chapter 1. So you're looking at number 1, which 3 phrases best summarize chapter 1? So you're going to pick 3 of the 4 phrases that best summarize this first chapter. Chapter 1 is told from which point of view? Is it told from first, second, third, from Jack's perspective, or third from Maddie's perspective? Okay. Then you are matching. So you can look back and read who these characters were if you don't remember, okay? But make sure you're using context clues and figuring out which one, and you can figure this one out. I know you can. Read this passage from the end of the chapter. Still they waited 1 minute more and 1 minute more, hoping she'd come. Why did the author most likely use repetition? Repetition is where he is repeating the 1 minute more, 1 minute more, okay? Number 2 at the top, the setting is important to the story because, explain why you think the author used the days of the week to mark time. So the word precarious in this sentence most likely means what? It was at a weird tilt, right? So what does that word mean? And then number 8, you need to see which literary device. So did they use a simile, a metaphor, an idiom? Remember, an idiom is when you say like, it's raining cats and dogs, right? It's not really raining cats and dogs. And then alliteration where they're saying like, Daisy Dawn drove the Dodge car, right? It's a lot of D sounds, right? And then write another figurative phrase that has the same meaning, okay? So go ahead and do that page and go ahead and turn it in online under reading for today. Thanks, class.